Yay, welcome back to another episode of the Radical Healing Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Betancourt, and today I have a guest, Stacey Uhrig. I'm going to read you a little bit about Stacey, and then we're going to say hello to her and hear some pearls of wisdom and helpful resources and information that can help you in your life as you're navigating whatever sort of complexities you're going through. We hope you find something in this episode that is useful, helpful, and soothing for you. So, Stacey Uhrig is a certified trauma recovery coach who specializes in making complex concepts related to developmental trauma easy to understand. She helps individuals recognize how childhood patterns and core beliefs can keep them feeling stuck in adulthood. Through her clear and relatable approach, Stacey empowers people to change these beliefs, resulting in greater peace, joy, and connection in their lives. She was also the host of the Flip Your Mindset podcast, which I have had the pleasure of being a guest on. And Stacey, it's so nice to have you here. Welcome.
You. I'm so excited.
Me three. Stacey's awesome. You should definitely check out her podcast. Follow her on Instagram if you don't know of her already. I really, really like your work, and I enjoy your perspective and your take on things. This morning, I was reading your. This is just an aside. I was reading the subtext of your episode commenting on Mel Robbins' work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if you haven't read that, I can briefly say in my own words the let them philosophy. It was kind of like stop controlling and letting people do their thing, and then you just worry about you. Is that kind of correctly how it
Yeah,
went?
I mean, I think ultimately the theory that Mel Robbins is trying to get across is we are controlling beings and we don't need to be controlling every outcome. And we certainly don't need to be controlling other people. And
Mm-hmm.
that we would likely find more peace in our life if we just allowed people to do what they want to do and be them,
Mm-hmm.
to really focus more internally on you doing what's best for you and focusing on more self-compassion, and it has a lot to do with setting boundaries about what you're allowing into your space and not feeling the need to have to get into other people's space. And I think my particular article, and I also did a podcast about this, was the concept is really, really good. And as I was reading the book, it resonated with me, but it also wasn't lost on me that I have been doing some form of work on myself for 40 years. And I would not have been able to do what she talked about in that book without the work that I've done. And that it's not a mindset shift to just let go of control.
Mm-hmm.
That's a deeply wired into the nervous system survival strategy and coping mechanism for a lot of people. And that is rooted in those developmental patterns that we learn growing up. And so to ask somebody to just let them and say it's just a mindset shift to just do it is literally asking somebody to run a marathon without a leg.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
have to there's a lack of safety and security in the idea to just let go of control for a lot of people, and that's a nervous system shift. That's not a mindset shift. So my concern with the book, and I do love the book, I to me it resonated with me, and it's very much in alignment with the way I coach my clients, but I know which clients are ready to take that on and which ones that's too far of a reach yet. So my
Mm-hmm.
concern with the book is because it doesn't take this trauma formed approach, and it's getting so much press that people are going to read the book and feel even worse about themselves, and that there could be a level of shame associated with, wow, everybody's able to do this and I can't. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
describe in the book why it would be difficult for somebody to do it. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
It makes perfect sense to me. It also sounds like a really like a thing that's easier said than done. And if you're
100%.
someone like Mel Robbins, who has done an immense amount of work on herself, can say that. And there is like a realm of people that will be like, yes, we are at this place as well. That's our next level of achievement is to
That's
let
right.
to see. It's almost like a Buddhist level.
It's
enlightenment.
a little bit of an enlightened idea, and I actually sent her an email stating what I just said because I wasn't gonna go out and start promoting this in a podcast and writing an article about it without actually giving her the opportunity to address it with me. Of course, I didn't hear from her. I don't expect to hear from her, but the idea is, and I have heard back from a lot of other therapists and a lot of other trauma specialists in the space that the article that I wrote and the podcast that I did on that was spot on. They were thinking and feeling the same thing as they were reading it.
Mhm.
So
Mm,
again, this is not to ding the book. I think it's a great book. I just think that you need to be at a certain level in your own personal healing journey in order
mhm,
for it to click. And if you're not there yet, it has the potential to bring potentially more shame to somebody's nervous system, which is obviously not what we want.
right. No, I think it was a really, really valid point that you made. And especially for people who were raised in really unpredictable or hostile environments and have a survival coping mechanism of appeasing and pleasing other people. And their whole thing has been let them, or they will anyways, or like it's just going to be like that. And it really puts them in this diminished place of their own selfhood.
Well,
So,
it's interesting because a local gift shop that's really very community based in my area had grabbed the book and it was flying off the shelves in their store, and I happened to be in there and I had already read the book, and we were kind of talking about the perspectives, and they said, "Would you be open to moderating a discussion about this with the community?" So we've already done 3 book moderations only because they're just flooded. Like, we've had over 75 people wanting to attend these book conversations about it specifically. We're about to do a 4th because it just keeps coming. The more
wow.
people read it, the more people want to discuss it. But I
Wow.
open up with this concept of there are going to be a group of people in this room who are reading this and maybe don't feel comfortable saying, "Wow, it's nice for you, but I can't." I mean, they literally think they can't, and they'll
Mhm.
say they can't, and I get a lot of net head nods, and I say, "If this speaks to you, raise your hand." At least 50 people, at least 50%, I should say, would raise their hand. And I think I really wanted to start with that because I didn't want anybody to feel as though here we are going down this track of this is fantastic for everyone when I just knew it was just going to be a reality of the situation. X number of people in a room, there's going to be a large percentage that are like, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
And I had people say, well, some of us just can't do it. And I said, listen, everyone actually can do it. You may just not be able to do it right now.
Mhm.
And unless you're willing to do the work and get curious, it really is about curiosity. It's a data point for someone. If they read this book and it gives them a visceral response. I actually had somebody say to me, I got through the first chapter and I had to just close the book. It just made me so uncomfortable because every part of me, and I say that intentionally, the parts piece, every part of me was screaming, I can't let go of control. And I
Mm.
said, well, that's just a really great data point for you if you want to get curious as to why,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So let's
It's
bring
that
it to that
opportunity.
point. How might someone begin that type of self-inquiry, or like at what people who are feeling uncomfortable with this kind of material, at what place do they begin to start?
I mean, I think it's just the awareness, right? If you're already judging yourself while you're reading the book and saying, I can't do this, and it's nice that everybody else can, but there's just no way I can allow my child to do X, or I can allow my spouse to do Y, or I can allow my boss, or I can allow my coworker, or my sibling, or my parent, and I don't have the luxury to not tell them what to do or try to control the outcome. That's the time for you to get curious. And, by the way, it's exhausting for people to be hustling like that all the time. A lot of people in the book club discussions actually said, I didn't realize how controlling I was till I read the book.
Mm. So that's a very
And
helpful point about the book. then as well on the
No
in an
doubt.
unintentional way.
And I think the other slant to it, and it was kind of touched upon, but very, very lightly. And again, look, Mel's not a trauma specialist. She's not trained in trauma. So I don't expect the book to have a trauma informed slant by any means. But it was something that caught my attention when I read the book. And it is something that someone brought up in one of the sessions that I did, which is if you happen to be in an environment where there's a quote unquote bad actor, meaning you're in a relationship with someone, and again, professional, personal, it doesn't matter, whose intention is to cause harm. We cannot just let them,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because we really do need to prioritize ourself, our nervous system, our well-being. And so I was kind of surprised that that wasn't really addressed more, because the concept of just let anybody do whatever they want to do and don't worry about them and worry about you, but you happen to be, say, in an experience, in a situation where you're being psychologically abused, emotionally abused, verbally abused, mentally abused, let alone physically, sexually, financially, whatever it is, obviously,
Mhm.
right? So that play on words, it can get extended to another level, and so we really have to be so careful. Um, and so of course we addressed it, and we talked about, being able to recognize, because not everyone can recognize when they're in that kind of environment,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Um, that you always have a right to put yourself first. And that was kind of the second part of that whole conversation in every session I did, which was, unfortunately, all the people that attended these sessions were all women. And there has been this covert, subvert programming, conditioning of women, specifically in the United States. I can't speak outside of this country, where we've been taught to deprioritize ourselves and deprioritize our needs and meet the needs of others. And so, this concept of just you let them do them and then I let me is also very hard for people to wrap their brain around, because again, deeply rooted in the nervous system, it does not feel physically comfortable to
Mhm.
even prioritize our own needs. So
Mhm.
a- again, like you said, it's almost like a Buddhist enlightenment. It's like, this is the thing we're working towards. And
Mhm.
this is kind of what I talked about in the article. Like, it's great. It's something to aspire to, but gosh, there's a lot of work to be done, depending on what's inside your invisible backpack that you're carrying every day to get from
Mhm.
X to Y. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. I haven't read the book even though I want to, and I wanna, like, see it with different kinds of filters on, try on different filters if
Sure.
I choose to read it and look through the material. But even as you're just speaking right now, like my mind is going to this is actually feels dangerous within the current political climate in the
Yes.
United States and elsewhere. To just let them feels let's just take it away from the book for a minute. If we are just going around saying just let them or don't pay attention and focus on yourselves, we're also being permissible to allowing violence to happen without being vocal or standing up for ourselves or creating modes of safety for
Well,
our
let's
other people as well.
so this is when I brought in the idea of quote unquote bad actors, right? So if we're in a situation where somebody, it's not malicious, it's not, there's no malintent, it's just benevolent. So an example that she gave in the book, this is a very benign example, but gosh, did it speak to a lot of people
Mm,
um, in these book clubs. And that's why I think the book's getting a lot of press and it's doing well, because it's actually very relatable. In this benign kind of example, she gives that her daughter, she has three children, two girls and a boy. And the two girls, when it came to their senior proms, it was 12 months in the making. What am I going to wear? And what am I going to get my spray tan? And how am I going to look? And what am I going to do with my friends? And where are we going to go to eat? And it was like planning for a dissertation just to go to a
just a
prom for the
preoccupation.
girls.
Hmm.
Totally. And then her son comes up in the mix as the last one, and he's like not giving a shit. And it's literally 2 weeks before the prom, and she's like, "Do you have anything planned yet?" He's like, "I don't even know if I'm gonna go." And then, like, maybe a week beforehand, he's like, "So I've decided to go. I'm gonna take so and so." And now she's spinning her wheels. She's getting a corsage. She's making plans with the other family. She's doing all this stuff. He doesn't give a shit. But in
Right.
her mind, it has to be a certain way.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the control. And then
Mhm.
what happened was she bought this corsage against his will. He said, "Do not buy the corsage." She, in her mind, was, "I know better." This is where the let them comes in. "I know better. She's going to be disappointed if there's not one there. I'm going to do the right thing. You're going to look like a schmuck." And she's anxious. She's spinning herself out going down this rabbit hole. She gets there, the girl puts a corsage on him. So she's now feeling bold, like, see, I did do the right thing, because he'd feel like an asshole if he wasn't going to give her something. Sorry, I'm cursing on your
Yeah, well, I
podcast.
do it all the time.
Okay. And then
We
she
have an
goes,
E rating.
yes, I do too. So then
Right.
she goes and gives the corsage to him, and the girl already has her own corsage because she's creative and she made one for herself.
Wow, that's interesting. I like
And
that.
this, and so this is why he was like, don't bother, because he kind of knew this girl. So now
Huh.
Mel was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I should have listened to my kid." And now all of a sudden they're getting all their pictures taken, and the skies just open up and it starts to pour. And she's
Oh.
freaking out because now the pictures aren't going to be perfect.
Wait, who is freaking out? Mel?
Mel is freaking out.
Okay.
And so she's trying to control the outcome. She's trying to control the end result of the good picture and the perfect thing and the perfect environment and all of this. And she's spinning herself out. They're all now soaking wet. And she said, "Okay, where are you all 12 of you,
Mm.
going to eat?" And of course, nobody arranged anything. So now she's also angry because it's not the way it's supposed to be. And I'm putting this in quotes. And these
God.
kids decide that they're going to go to like some shack of a place that just like sells taco out of a window.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
in her mind, this was not good enough. And her daughter was saying, "Mom, just let them. Just let them. Just let them do what they're going to do. Like, let it go." And so these are the kinds of examples that she utilized throughout the book. Or another example she utilized was somebody on a plane behind her on a commercial flight. She's getting ready to go do a speaking gig, and the guy's like hacking up a lung and he's just coughing into the air and he's not being considerate. He's not coughing into his elbow. She's getting annoyed. She's terrified she's going to get sick from it. She turns around and asks him to kindly just be respectful and kind of cough into his hand or his elbow, and he says no.
Ah,
And
gross.
her response was, "Okay, I just have to let him do what he's going to do, but then I have to let me. Like, what can I do for myself in this situation versus putting energy towards being angry at this guy?" So these are these kind of benevolent, very relatable, easy situations ish.
Mhm.
When we talk about what you're talking about, which is this other level of what we're seeing inside our environment, our political climate, where things are actually not benevolent. There are, and this is my own political point of view,
Not okay.
bad actors,
Mhm.
meaning that there is an intent to disrupt the nervous system. The guy that's coughing in the airplane, or her son not wanting to get a corsage or going to eat tacos out of a shack, is not designed to break down your nervous system. What we're
Mhm.
seeing politically, not just here in the States, but all over the world, are people in power who have an intention of breaking down the nervous system so you will submit.
Mhm.
That's a
Mhm.
very different situation. And this is what I was saying in the book club discussions, which is you are going to come up against, there are going to be people that you're going to come up against who unfortunately have malintention. And at
Mhm.
that point, letting them know. But here's the thing, I live in the States, you live in Spain. Do I feel in my home in New Jersey that I have a lot of power over what's going on in my political climate other than making phone calls and showing up somewhere? Not really. And
Mhm.
so, what can happen in that kind of situation and how you would apply it here is if that political climate is dysregulating to your nervous system, because it's not for everybody, um, and you
Mhm.
feel disempowered
Mhm.
and you feel helpless, which is the trauma for people, at some point you do have to kind of say, I, I, I have to focus on me right now and my nervous system. And despite all of the storm that's happening in and around me, what can I do to protect my sense of being, my sense of safety, my sense of security? And that actually comes from deep within.
Mhm. What are
Any
some things that someone could do if they're in that position where they don't feel like they can rise to any sort of occasion to support a community, for example, like they're really grappling with their own wounds and their own traumas that have not been resolved. Like they're not
Well, that's
available
right.
for other things, right? Like,
That's right. And so obviously, look, the first thing I would recommend is going and seeing and working with someone. I mean, it's a heavy lift. The work that I do with people, it's heavy and it's
mm-hmm,
not easy and it's a heavy load and it's a lot to process. And so I would say the first thing is once you've gained awareness that you are triggered 24/7 and you're not living in a state of peace and you want that state of peace, because that's the first thing, then lean in a little bit and maybe be open to doing the work and working with somebody that specializes in understanding trauma and its impact on the body and the nervous system and the mind. Um, I strongly recommend somebody that's trained in parts work or internal family systems because they'll really have a way of helping guide. And then working with them, learn how to get grounded and be mindful and stay in the present. The present's not a great situation, but a lot of what people are freaking out are, about are, well, what's going to happen next? And what's going to happen next? And what's the next shoe to drop? And getting anticipatory and getting into that future realm is not going to help either.
mm-hmm,
So it's not just one thing. But if people are feeling dysregulated, given what's going on in whatever political climate they're in, wherever they're listening to this from, again, it's a data point of what can I do for myself and who can I work with to teach me the tips and the tricks on how to stay grounded despite the storm happening around me.
mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm,
the let me piece, actually.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I have kind of like a maybe a slight backup question. So like what about people who are like they know something's off. Like they know they need to do something because they feel all over the place most
Yeah.
of the time. What are some like strong indicators or telltale signs or symptoms that people can recognize? Like for me, like I really feel like I walked around with anxiety and trauma that was undealt with for years and I just chronically drank to avoid feeling or noticing any of that. So people who are in that soup of
Yeah.
like I know something needs to change, but how do I recognize in myself that like I in fact have been traumatized or that I'm carrying unhealed trauma? How might people see that?
Yeah. I mean, look, you just said it. Like someone's walking around saying, I'm not connected to myself. The reality is, and this is its simplest form, when we are not calm in our nervous system, it's a sign. And if
Mhm,
it's consistent, um, that there's some work to be done. Now, like you, I walked around with anxiety in my nervous system from the age of 13 to 33. I did not have the ability to recognize that that was not normal. That
exactly.
was that was my normal. Now I can confidently say that is not normal. And
Mhm,
so this is why I go around on podcasts and I have my own podcast and I write with the things that I write to educate people because I had no way of knowing that the normal baseline for a healthy nervous system and a healthy body is a state of calm because didn't have it in my nervous system. I didn't know that that's what people were walking around with. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. Nobody was talking about their nervous system and anxiety.
no.
We didn't even have the word anxiety. We used the word stress and overwhelm.
Mm.
And what I know now is that a healthy, regulated nervous system state is calm. And, maybe 15 years ago ish, I remember being at an Easter Sunday dinner at my sister-in-law's house. And I kept saying to my sister-in-law's mom, "Oh gosh, I'm so tired. So tired. I don't know why I'm so tired." And I literally heard a voice in my head, which I've now learned or just, always be open to what I'm receiving. And what I heard was, "You're not tired, you're relaxed."
Mm.
And that's exactly what I did. I go, huh. So this is what relaxed feels like.
Feels like
Like
being tired or just allowing your body to feel like it needs
it's
rest?
not I just didn't have any other word for not feeling activated.
Mm.
My body was at peace. I was so relaxed, I could just chill. And
Mm.
in my mind, the only time I ever really chilled up to that point was if I was going to sleep, right?
Mm.
I was always activated from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, and often waking up in the middle of the night still activated. Just so riddled. I would wake up, gosh, so many times in the middle of the night, just drowning in anxiety, worries, thoughts, just constant. And I didn't know that that was not normal. This is not the things that would even be talked about in therapy. Like they would just, I was always told, listen, this was my lot in life. I came from a long line of people with anxiety and depression. And this is just my inheritance, which honestly, I don't buy it. I don't
Mm.
buy it because now that I know what I know about generational trauma and nervous systems and epigenetics, and my body might have been primed to be a little bit more sensitive to responses because of the history that I've had and also my family's history, the longevity of running as Jews from Eastern Europe. I mean, you just put it all into perspective that there was a
Mhm.
piece of me that was like, we're never going to be safe. We always have to be ready to go.
Mhm.
That's that
Mhm.
heightened state that we call anxiety. It creates a visceral response in our body.
Mhm.
But it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be that way, and once I heard that voice that said, "You're not tired, you're just relaxed," I was like, "Oh my gosh, really?" And that's where the mindset shift comes in, because if I said to myself, "Oh, I'm relaxed," versus tired, there was a little bit of an energy shift in me, and I
Mm.
had a client come in recently. I remember that happened 15 years ago. She just came in, like, last week or the week before, and she said I said, "How are you doing?" She goes, "I'm just so tired." And I looked at her and I said, "I'm going to ask you a question. Are you tired or are you just relaxed? Like you don't And she was like, "Holy shit. Is this relaxation?" And I was like, "Maybe." And we
Yeah.
talked about it and she was like, "That's a whole other narrative." And you know what? I think you're right. I think I've just been living in this state of chaos, and now I'm not in it, and my body doesn't have to activate, and this is what it feels like. She's like, "I don't
Mhm.
know that I've ever had access to this." She's
Hmm.
55 years old.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
that made sense to me because I knew her history. This
Mhm.
is why I do what I do, because that's a simple shift. And it's just a question. I'm not telling her anything. I just said, "Do you think you could just not be activated right now?" And she's like, "Oh my God, is this what it's like?" But we can be so black and white and so myopic in our view. We don't have that kind of wider drone down view of like, this is what a relaxed nervous system can, and it's okay for me to rest.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can be safe if I just rest or am peaceful,
That's
calm,
right.
unguarded.
It's very unfamiliar for such a large percentage of
Mhm.
people. So, getting back to your question, the chaos that's being dredged up all over the world right now politically feeds into people whose comfort level is being in an activated state. It's a discomfort comfort. It's like they're familiar, so they'll stick with it
Mhm.
because that relaxed state is not familiar like it wasn't for me.
Right, right.
You have to lean into that unfamiliar and make that you're comfortable.
The new familiar. Yep.
And be mindful. Don't sabotage yourself and start creating chaos where it doesn't exist just to get the hit of the
Mhm.
adrenaline.
Mhm. Yeah, that familiar cascade of emotions
Totally.
that comes from anxiety and stress.
So it's a really interesting landscape right now for a lot of people that have unresolved trauma.
Mhm. I have a question about you personally. Do you feel that from 13 to 33 was your like acute more acute stage of living in heightened activation for the majority of the time?
Yes.
Are you able to identify factors like obviously your lineage and your ancestry that you carry in your DNA, right?
Yeah.
With you, ancestral trauma came into your life, your this incarnation with you. But were there other inciting incidences that kind of compounded on that?
No doubt. And so, this is what was so confusing. And I think this is what is still so confusing to people in our generation. And again, I'm 53. So just to give perspective, I think because I grew up not wealthy, but certainly not wanting for anything. Okay. So food was always abundant. Nothing was scarce. Let's just put it this way. I had
Mhm.
all my needs met and beyond. Um, and I lived in a very wealthy community. And there were two parents in the home that, as long as all of that was the normal, I have nothing I should be complaining about. But the reality was that my parents divorced when I was 11 years old. I can confidently say that it is my perception that the two people that my parents married, and they both got married very quickly after their divorce. Like one was married within 2 months of the divorce, and the other was married within 4 months of the divorce with a move in between.
Suspect.
Yeah, it was a lot. Okay. So, like, they were separated for 18 months, got divorced, and honestly, I feel like they both got engaged like that night. They
Wow.
got divorced in August. My dad was remarried in November. We moved in December. My mom was remarried in January. And it was just like boom, boom, boom. And
Child.
a
Mhm.
lot, and I was 11. So that's a lot of adjustment. Number one, what I can see now, for whatever it's worth, um, neither step parent really was interested in the full package.
Mm.
They were willing to take the full package, but it wasn't like it wasn't an exciting part of the factor of getting remarried. They were
Mhm.
marrying their to be spouse, and by the way, we're going to bring these kids along kind of feeling. So
Mm.
when that's the circumstance, and it's not this excitement of like we're going to have this bonus family and we're going to have this blended family and we're excited about all of that, you feel it as the child. Now, I could not put that into words, honestly, until I was in
Mhm.
my late 40s.
Mm.
But what I know to be true is if you're brought into a family environment and the child doesn't feel like they belong, and that was really the hinge. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere, but I went from a household prior to where I felt like I inherently belonged and was deeply wanted.
Mhm.
So our household growing up before the divorce, I would consider to be a very safe, very secure, very loving household. Was there dysfunction? Of course there was. My dad traveled a ton. He was definitely a workaholic. He was not a present parent. This was not a vibe that my mom was interested in. And it really impacted their marriage. And I think it really was impactful towards their divorce. But as a child, I did not really feel that too much.
Mhm.
So to go from a household where I felt safe, secure, significant, important, more than enough, to then end up very quickly in two environments that I was constantly pickling back and forth in, where
Mm,
nothing was enough, where I
mm,
didn't feel seen, heard, understood, where I didn't feel important or significant or
mm.
that I mattered or that I was even wanted there. Luckily, my confidence was strong enough and baked in because I had a good childhood up until that age, that I
Yeah.
actually had really inherent confidence and I knew I was enough. I think that that was such a gift for me.
Mhm.
But the rest of it was very impactful because I found myself constantly in the state of, am what I doing enough, enough, enough? Because if it's not, I'm going to be on the receiving end of psychological shit, mental shit, verbal shit, emotional shit that was just being slung at us 24/7, which I was not accustomed to. This was
Mhm.
not my familiar. My nervous system went on haywire
Mhm. Mhm.
because none of that felt normal. None of that felt safe. So I went from this really quote unquote normalized functional environment to this very dysfunctional environment literally overnight. I did
Yeah.
not understand it.
No.
So trying to, I'm going to really say in quotes, survive that from the age of 13 to 19, or from really 12 to 19 till I finally moved out and really didn't come back home. My nervous system was wrecked because the parts of me that had to activate just decided it wasn't safe to never be activated. But I didn't know any of that. That was so unconscious. And I think the real trauma is never what happened. It's what's continuing to happen.
Mhm. What lives in you.
What still lives in you. So
Yeah.
then even being out of that environment for another 10 years, 12 years, my body was still acting as though it was in that environment.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I never had my amygdala never turned off. My nervous system was always ready to go. I always had a go bag ready to go in my nervous system. I was always ready to fight, always ready to defend myself, always ready to protect somebody, always ready for the fight.
So yeah, what are some like could you give us some descriptive examples of like what that looked like for you in this time of your life and how it would show up or present?
Yeah, a perfect example I have, and I don't know why it sticks with me, but it really does all the time. And I did a workshop last night on burnout because all of this leads to burnout, by the way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
This is the end result.
all of this leads to a nervous breakdown, which I had in um, the early 2000s, like 2001, 2002.
Mhm.
Um, but I vividly remember, so it was well before I had kids. So I'm going to say I was probably 28, 29, 30 years old. It's a Sunday. I'm at Costco with my husband. I'm not working. I haven't worked all weekend. And I am literally drowning in anxiety from the tip of my head to the bottom of my toes. Just, it's almost like if anybody is listening that's ever had that, like it's like trying to swim through molasses, like you're forcing yourself to get up and move and do. And in your mind, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
none of it makes sense because there's nothing acutely happening in and around you that would cause that level of activation. And
Mhm.
it will make you feel crazy.
Mhm. Was it like a panic attack, would you say, or the preface to?
Constant,
Mhm.
constant,
Oh, constant.
constant. So, like, I would say, yes, a panic attack because it was not acute. It was almost like it never ever really left my body. It was always a low hum. But in a situation like this at the Costco, it was like turned up to 100.
Wow.
So I'm like, it almost, for me personally, because for everyone's different, for me, it would feel like I had a train running through my body or like a train running through my chest. That if you could put your hand on my chest, you would actually feel like a rumble. And that was
Mm.
just a constant sensation in my body at different volumes. So in that particular moment, and I think about it often, it was at like 100.
Oh my
And I'm like,
god.
this just doesn't make any sense. Like, I shouldn't, and that word shouldn't is a key. I really shouldn't. There's nothing here that should be creating this level of activation.
Mhm.
At that point, I did have a nervous breakdown right after that. And I ended up going on medication for the first time. I was probably 30, 31, 32, somewhere in that realm. And the psychiatrist said, listen, you come from this long line of depression and anxiety, and it's biochemical, and this medication should help. It was Zoloft. And I took it, and honestly, it did help. Like, I do remember waking up and saying to my husband, oh my God, I'm breathing. Like, I don't think I've taken a full breath in like 20 years. But again, I didn't
Yeah,
know that because it was my normal. So,
totally.
so what I now know as a practitioner of trauma is that my window of capacity, my window of tolerance really widened and gave me some breathing room, and it allowed my nervous system to stabilize. But what I also know was like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, because the reality is it wasn't a biochemical imbalance, that there was still 1,000 lacerations on my heart of
Mm-hmm.
pain and wound and upset and hurt, that this was the salve for the moment, just like for you, drinking was the salve for the moment, but
Mm-hmm.
then it stops working
Mm-hmm.
because we're not really addressing the core root of the wound to begin with. We're just really numbing out the symptoms. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not anti-medication by any means. I think it's a great tool to help widen that capacity so you can do the work
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
not be so activated. But I don't know that it's the best long-term solution in isolation.
No, it can be an optional stepping stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great support. It's a
Mm-hmm.
great supplemental support,
Mm-hmm.
but I also believe that there's work to be done. And if someone is utilizing medication to get that breath, which I think you should, because not being able to breathe is a horrible feeling,
Mm-hmm.
um, consider also adding into that mix, working with somebody that can help you figure out what was causing the activation to begin.
Mm-hmm. How did you do that for yourself? Because we don't advise ourselves.
Well, here's what I
That'd be
did.
nice.
I did what everybody said you should do. I was going to therapists, and I remember specifically going to my mother, 14, 15 years old, desperate, desperate. I had now been in this environment for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very activated. I was very alone in myself. I was very messed up in my emotions. I was never a kid that got in a lot of trouble. I really wasn't a thrill seeker, but I just knew I was not okay. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how, honestly, because we really didn't talk about these things in the mid 80s. But I desperately sought therapy and basically said I was going to run away if they didn't send
You
me.
don't get me some therapy.
I was so desperate, but that was not a
Did
well
did they
accepted
get
thing.
you
And
into some sort of treatment at that age?
after much fighting and me basically leaving and coming back and leaving and coming back and saying, you have to promise me you're going to take me, I ended up paying for half of it. I mean, they were putting in every barrier they could, and when I say I had to pay for half of it, it was $15 copay. Like, in today's day and age,
At the time? Mm-hmm.
are you kidding? If a kid went to a parent, was like, I need therapy, they'd be jumping at it. But back
I
in the
wish. I
day,
wish. I mean, as a parent, I definitely want to cater to the needs of all my children, and I have four, as you know. And it's at times, even just their like mealtime needs feel extremely overwhelming for me at times. If they all came to me at the same time and they're like, I need a podiatrist. I need to go to the eye doctor. I need a therapist. I need a shaman. I would be like, okay, we'll do
yeah.
some
Well,
homework,
now and remember,
contacts,
well,
some preliminary footwork. Not to discredit what a child needs, but as a parent, and you understand, it's really overwhelming to be a parent. And when
well,
we're dysregulated and dealing with our own stuff, it's so. I'm not. I hope I'm not sounding like I'm making excuses, but
no, but I think it's actually a good point, because let's set the landscape here. Here I am. I'm the oldest of four children. My mother continued to have more kids after she got married.
mm,
So, when my parents got divorced and they got remarried, there were two of us, myself and my brother. My mother then very quickly had two more children. So at that point, I'm 12 and a half and 14 and a half years older than these two kids, which I love
Mhm.
dearly. And so if I'm coming to my mother at age 15, begging her to take me to a therapist, she also has at that time an 11-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
And so, and by the way, the household was dysfunctional.
Mhm.
So I'm not the only one feeling dysregulated. I'm quite sure my mom was. It's just I was the only one willing to talk about it.
Mhm.
So to your point, I'm sure it was very overwhelming for a lot of reasons. Number one, just logistically, how is I can't get myself to this place by myself. My mother's got to upload everybody, get them into this minivan, take me a half hour away, sit around for an hour so I can go to this therapy session, bring everyone back. It's all happening in and around dinner time. She's
Yeah.
probably exhausted too. Like, it's not as easy as me just saying, I want to go to therapy. And it
Mhm.
wasn't like it is today where there was one on every fucking corner or I could attend it online. Like, there was a lot of logistics. So I think in her defense, she was probably trying to push back a little bit to see if I really felt like I needed it because it was going to be a logistical nightmare.
Mhm.
And she didn't have a lot of money.
Mhm.
Long story short, to answer your question, how did I get from there to here? I was in some form of therapy from the time I was 15 until the time I was 35. So that's 20 years. And
Mhm.
honestly, at some point, I'm like, how come I still feel like shit? Like, none of this is working. Because
Wow.
really, if you think about it, my mindset was, and you wouldn't know this, but I'll tell you, my mindset was fine. Like, I had a lot of reflection. I had a lot of introspection. I could see things from a bigger perspective. I had an understanding of generational trauma, even at that age. Like, I
Mhm.
knew it wasn't about me. My self esteem was not poor.
Mhm.
My sense of self was not poor, but my nervous system was a wreck.
Mhm.
Meaning, I just walked with this level of constant activation and anxiety 24/7. There was no therapist at that time, and most therapists today are not trained in the nervous system, they're trained in the
Mhm.
mind.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
was starting to be told, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, I don't know why you're here. Like, you know the things. And I'm like, but my mind is not connected with my body.
Mhm.
So what ended up happening is I had a nervous breakdown in my 30s. I started with the Zoloft. The guy was a psychiatrist. He sent me to a therapist. The therapist is like, I don't think there's really much I can do for you at this point, which made sense because I'd been in therapy for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so we really just stuck with the psychiatrist and we were mitigating this activation in my system with this medication. In my 40s, I had another nervous breakdown. And it was very situational. I had had a business, the business closed, it caused a huge financial strain on my family. It was really catastrophic and a crisis mode. And I felt all of these wounds were getting resurfaced, this lack of safety, this lack of security within myself. And what I realized at that time was money and having enough of it really made me feel safe and secure in a lot of ways. And now it was gone and I wasn't
Mhm.
going to have it for a very long time. And now I had to figure out how to be safe and secure in my body without the things that were causing me to feel safe and secure.
Mm.
And there was
Mhm.
no amount of Zoloft that was going to fix that.
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
It was during that time that somebody gave me the name of a clinical hypnotherapist.
Mm.
And I thought, well, nothing else has worked. And I
Mhm.
went to her and she was not a therapist. She didn't have an MSW. She didn't have a degree in psychology. She really was trained in hypnosis. And she was really, for all intents and purposes, like a spiritual healer, like a spiritual guide, or like a coach, which I
Mhm.
never had access to before.
Mhm.
And I hadn't done it because it's not covered by insurance. So I was in the zone of like, well, I can only work with people that are in my insurance. And
Mhm.
this was a leap. Financially, it was a leap of faith, and it was a game changer for me
Mhm.
because I started to understand why my body and my mind were not connected. And I
Mhm.
started to understand that the work that needed to be done was not necessarily in my mind, it was my body.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's what took me down my own path of getting trained and understanding every aspect of that so I could help other people not suffer the way that I suffered.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, what a
I
journey.
know.
Oh, I'm like,
A
my
lot.
own body is going, woo, like
Yeah.
my emotional waves are, but you know what? I love my emotions now, where, because I've come through a lot like you have. And in the past, I would have been afraid of these types of feelings of like, oh, this sentence makes me cry or tightens my chest or like,
Yeah.
and coming through some type of nervous system healing allows you to treat your emotions more like weather and states instead of fixed locales inside of our body.
Yeah.
As we are both hypnotherapists, we understand that access points in of constriction or restriction within the body are what lead you to these recessed places in the mind, and it's not the other way around. And it really, we cannot negate that the body has so much memory and wisdom,
So much
and all
memory.
of the potential is by coming home to being inside of ourselves and cleaning up our own house, so to speak, first before we are available for greater things, like just letting them, or you know rising to meet the fascism of 2025 or whatever it may be. If we don't have a personal capacity, we have to start there. We really, really do.
100%.
I love your story. I know about your work, but I love that I've gotten to see behind the scenes more, and like really feel your essence. And um, I know that people listening are probably going to want to know more about you and how they can work with you. Can you share some of that with us, where people can find you, and typically what kind of clients do you take?
Yeah, so I would say typically the kind of clients I take are people who just generally feel so stuck in life and maybe they've gone to therapy before and it hasn't worked for them, or um they're in this constant state of anxiety, or they do have that inner critic where there's that chatter of they're not enough and they don't feel confident and it's starting to impact their lives in ways that they've just kind of hit a wall and they say something's got to shift. Right. So it's a very wide, broad stroke of people that I can see. I tend to also specialize in a subset of women who have experienced narcissistic abuse, whether it be at the hands of a spouse, a sibling, a parent, coworker, boss. There's a certain level of psychological terror that happens during that type of toxicity. And it really creates a sense of self doubt and really for the person to almost become a shell of themselves. And for a variety of reasons, that's also something I really understand and I know how to hold space for, and I can help people through to get back to a healthier sense of self and to go from that self-doubt to that abundance of confidence, which is it's work, it's not a short leap. A great way for people to follow me is Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, because I spend so much time creating content there that I hope simplifies some really complex concepts. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just my name, Stacey Uhrig, Uhrig, and following me on my website, which is flipyourmindset.com. Those are probably the two best ways for people to find me.
And check out Stacey's
Excuse me.
podcast, and salute and bless you.
Thank you.
And check out Flip Your Mindset with Stacey Uhrig. And it's been such a pleasure talking with you. I love talking with you and
Thank you.
hearing all of your wisdom and your experience and your expertise. It's like it's very nourishing on the ears and the soul. And thanks so much for being here.
It's
Maybe we can do
always
this
my
again
pleasure.
sometime.
I would love it. I'm always down for, look, my goal with anybody's podcast, with my own podcast, is to share these concepts in a way where somebody's listening and goes, "Oh my God, maybe I'm not broken. Maybe
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with me. Maybe my experience was more impactful on my nervous system than I realized." That's really the goal,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is just to help people feel seen, heard, understood, generate a little bit of awareness. And I'm always happy to have a conversation that would allow for that.
Mm-hmm. Me as well. Yeah, more resources, right? Because
No
it's not
doubt.
just talk therapy, it's not just AA programs, it's not just pharmaceuticals. There's a whole array of modalities that people can dip their toes into and see
Yeah,
what fits and suits them and where they
that's right.
feel comfortable and
It's
safe.
not a one size fits all by any means.
No, 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 no. Oh, I love it. It's so good to see you. I'm going to put links for Stacey and where to find Stacey in the show notes. And Stacey, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you. I really am just so appreciative for the platform.
Igualmente. And everyone listening, thank you for being here. Please share this episode with anyone that you think would benefit from it. And we will see you again next week.
Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K 12. K 12 powered schools are accredited tuition free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed at home with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 3 million families who have chosen K 12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.